Coming up on UGTV, Standing Committee Meetings of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. A meeting of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee. This will be followed by a meeting of the Economic Development and Finance Standing Committee.
Commissioner Townsend has been delayed on her way to our meeting tonight, and since the first item of the first meeting directly concerns her district, I'd like to see if we can wait just a couple more minutes to start this meeting to give her an opportunity to arrive. If too much more time passes, we will go ahead and begin the meeting and she can join us when she arrives. this meeting of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee. Public comment is welcome on any item that comes before the committee tonight. If you wish to make a comment, you'll come forward to the microphone, be recognized, and have up to 3 minutes to make your comment about that particular item. We do also ask that for accurate recording and broadcast purposes, everyone speak as directly as possible into a microphone. And for those of you who would come up to the podium over here, just make sure that the little light is green at the base of the microphone. That means it's turned on. So, roll call, please.
Roll call. Walters?
Here.
Regia?
Here.
Townsend?
Here.
Burrows?
Here.
McKiernan?
Here. There were no revisions to the original agenda, so it stands as originally submitted. Our first item of business is to approve our standing committee minutes from our September 10th meeting.
Move for approval.
There's a motion and a second to approve as submitted. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Those minutes are approved as submitted, which takes us to our committee agenda. Item number 1 tonight is land bank business. Actually, it's item number 1 and item number only is land bank business. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Slaughter.
Thank you. Good evening. Let's get into it. First is an item that we're bringing back, I believe, from the September 10th meeting. This is the request to hold all land bank property that is currently will reside in the Northeast Master Plan area. And again, just as a recap, we will request a hold on all land bank vacant lots in the area for 180 days. This will mainly extend to yard extensions and property acquisitions. So if this is approved and we get a letter with or an application from one of those reasons, we will send them a letter saying it's currently on hold. We'll still review and we'll get back to them at a later date. Any application for single family or multifamily or development, we will still work those up and we will bring those within the 180 days if submitted. And then by the end of the 180 days, hopefully it'll be a little bit before then, we'll come back with some recommendations based on what's approved at the master plan and again, some recommendations on future land usage. So that is the request tonight.
So for a period of 6 months, any property acquisition or yard extensions would be held.
Just held. They're not denied. They'll just be sent a letter like we do with some of our other hold areas that right now it's on hold. We'll probably put some verbiage in there stating because of the Northeast Master Plan area.
And that's because we're waiting for developments with the recently completed Northeast Master Plan. We believe there could be developments in there that could use that land.
Correct. With the momentum that I think organizational wide we have with this master plan, some of the calls, emails, requests that our office has been getting, the interest is increasing for this area. And I think just to be strategic until we can kind of get all our ducks in a row, we just want to make sure that going forward, the best applications that benefit the neighborhoods are what's presented to you guys.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. Good evening. Mr. Slaughter, question. Is the plan to accept or just to not accept any applications for this proposed 180-day period? And the reason I'm asking that is what additional strain or burden would that put on your office to accept any applications for the land bank properties for that period of time? Wouldn't that just stack up if this proposed plan passes, there'd be no action on them anyway?
Correct. The only difference is they would not be presented to the standing committee or the board of trustees. So we'll work them up as usual. We have a spreadsheet, we enter them in. And then when we get to the point where we're ready to move forward, we'll probably have a meeting with a large number of applications on it for recommendation to approve, or if based on some of the recommendations for land usage we may submit to you, we may also come back and say that we feel that this application doesn't necessarily fit in the area that we're planning to do. So really it'll be business as usual. We just please ask for any applications that we get their patience during this time. But we're not going to not accept them. We'll still accept them as business as usual. It's just instead of being 30 to 45 days, it could be up to 180 days before we present them to the committee for consideration.
And that, you don't foresee that putting an added strain on your department's resources just to accept and hold them for that period?
No, I mean, once we get to the point where we present them, it'll still just be business as usual. We've had large months before we've brought applications into you, so we're ready to take on the challenge.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Slaughter? Sir, if you would please come forward to the microphone. I see the green light is on, so we will be able to hear you. You have 3 minutes. Yes, sir. Could you please state your name and your address for the record, please?
My name is Norris Williams. My address is 1215 Quindaro.
To the person who's running sound back there, can we get that microphone down on the podium top so it's not so high up? Perfect, thank you.
My name is Norris Williams. My address is 1215 Quindaro. I wanted to ask him, so you won't have any bidding on the lots in that area? You said till 180 days?
So what's your comment again?
Okay, on the lots up there, there won't be any bidding on buying the lots until 180 days? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Mr. Williams. What is going to happen is if approved tonight, any applications, including possibly some tonight, will just be put on hold. We'll correspond with you, and we'll let you know that there has been nothing decided other than we're just going to ask for your patience until we can bring it back for further consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? And Mr. Slaughter, do you need action from us to approve this recommendation?
Yes, I do.
Second?
There's a motion and a second to approve the proposed hold area for the Northeast Master Plan area. Any other discussion? Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Roll call, Walters. Aye. Murguia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Burrows. Aye. McKiernan.
Aye. And then, Mr. Slaughter, we've got one more proposed hold area, is that correct?
Yes, this is a project that we're still currently working out the details, but this request, it is not in the Northeast Master Plan area. As you can see, it's Taromie to the north, Reynolds Avenue to the south, and between 7th and 10th Street. And, you know, again, we're going to request all land bank property to be on held for this. We do, again, we're working out the details. We will be coming, hopefully in the next month or two, with the details of that project. We're very excited about it. But this is really just to help the organization and their financiers. We'll provide them with documentation that the board has approved the hold area for them. And that should help them get their project to the finish line so then we can come and present it and give you the details. But I will also add this project does involve rehabs and new construction.
So the Northeast hold was for 180 days. Is this a till further notice? Or
We will bring back those details of how long that term will be. It'll be longer because it'll be project related. And right now they're proposing at least a 2-year time frame for that. But they have expressed wanting every single property. They're not concerned with how small they are. I've seen a couple designs for those small lots. They've already had conversations with our planning department, and so far they haven't risen any objections and stuff. So again, we're going to be very excited to bring this forward.
any comments or questions from the committee for Mr. Slaughter?
Mr. Slaughter, okay, so here we have a project that's in process, is that it?
Correct.
Okay, we just don't know yet along this whole requested hold?
It's going to be very similar to the one we currently have with Mount Carmel, which can be up to 5 years of holding that for them. So that's kind of the language we're talking now. But again, we feel that's a fair trade-off for consideration of what the project's going to bring. And in the future, if we do receive an application, you know, we plan to reach out to them, and if this is maybe 1 or 2 lots, it's not in their plans, we'll definitely have the conversation to see if they'd be willing to release it out of the hole so we can bring it forward to you.
So the only question, well, okay. It seems as though we'd be approving something for which we still don't have one important aspect solidified yet, though, as compared to the one we just.
Well, I did ask Mr. Slaughter to run activity report for this area, and there's actually been very little activity in the last several years in this area, so it didn't strike me that we would necessarily be getting in the way of something that had been a popular area and lots of properties had been turning.
Okay. So if we were to approve this tonight, then will you come back at some later date and have us amended for a particular time period?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion on this proposed hold area?
Move for approval.
Second?
Oh. I'm sorry, didn't see you come into the microphone.
It's okay, I'm sorry. I was waiting also, I may be out of order, I was waiting for a call for a public comment, so my comment really goes with the motion that's already been voted on, I would imagine. That's for the Northeast Master Plan, but would you allow me to ask my question?
Absolutely will.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Elnora Jefferson at 419 Haskell in Kansas City, Kansas. And the couple of questions are about 4 questions that I had regarding the Northeast Master Plan, the hold on that. We support that in general because it's just a good business sense to do that. But the 4 questions that I have would be, 1, is the definition of development. I heard that it was for single family and maybe multifamily construction. I'd just like to know what the definition is of development, because development is one of the exclusions in that 180-day moratorium. Community development, there's economic development, and so forth, so I'd like to know what that is. The second thing is that when will the development areas be identified? Mr. Slaughter was very kind and nice and professional in coming to all of the neighborhood groups that asked for him to come, and he explained a lot of things. And one of the things that said was that there's going to be a decision made by a body that's going to show what the development areas are in the Northeast. So my question then is, when will those development areas be identified? Then the third question is, who will have input into the decision to go forward and how? For example, during the 180-day moratorium, there'll be some process or some procedure that will be identified, whereby A before B and C and that type of thing. So my question is, what kind of input will the deciding body have, and from whom will that be? And then the last thing is the interest that has peaked since the advertisement of the master plan, and maybe even before that, because what this is dealing with public lands, land bank lands, but it's not dealing with the market. It's not dealing with the open market. And there certainly has been speculations and buyers from all over the nation, if not even globally, for some of the land there. So the question is that the interest that the UG is seeing at this time, is it coming from developers, or is it coming from individuals who want to extend their yards and have gardens? So those are the 4 questions that I have, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jefferson. Mr. Slaughter has been writing down, I saw him writing with each of your 4 questions, and what we will do is he will gather the information, and I'll have him reach right back out to you, but then also ask that you get a report back to us at one of our future meetings with some more information related to the questions that she's brought forward.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you very much.
You know, Ms. Jefferson does sit on the advisory board, so we would anticipate probably the meeting we have before we bring these recommendations to you, we'll definitely share them with them and get their input as we move forward on this.
Fantastic. So we now have for the second hold area right here, we do have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion or comment on that particular issue? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Roll call Walters. Aye. Regia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Okay, well, we started with 15 applications, so now it looks like we'll just go ahead and consider the ones that are in the northeast area still on hold, and we'll just talk about the 4 remaining applications.
Okay, so I just want to clarify, you will follow up with these property owners that they're in the hold area?
Correct.
And they're still worked up, their application is still valid, it's simply being held?
Correct.
Okay.
So the first we have is 10841 Countryside Drive. We've been presented with a plan for a single-family build out there. Next, we have a yard extension at 1022 Barnett, and the applicant lives at 1020 Barnett. 344 Cambridge Street, which is just this square here, and the applicant is here at 340. And 2425 South 12th, which is the one to the north of the applicant at 2437 South 12th. I'm sorry, that's South 12th. So those are the 4 that are not in the Northeast Master Plan. We did meet with the advisory board, and they did review the applications, and there was no issues there. So our request would be for just those 4 applications to be forwarded to the board for final approval.
Mr. Townsend?
No,
Oh, I just saw you going for your button there. I thought you had a question or a comment. Any questions or comments for Mr. Slaughter on these 4? Is there a motion for these 4 properties?
Move for approval.
second.
There's a motion and a second to accept these 4 property applications as submitted. Any further comments? Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Roll call Walters.
Aye.
Regia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye. And I believe we have one more.
We have a transfer request, 1257 Reynolds Avenue by the Central Avenue Betterment Association. This is a lot that they're proposing will be built, the future home, or new headquarters for them. So what we discussed with CABA is presenting the transfer, at least get the approval process over, and then when they're ready to take possession of the property, then we will then transfer it over to them.
Move for approval.
There's a motion and a second to approve this transfer as submitted. Any other comments, any questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Slaughter, the CABA project, is there a time frame in which they have to build?
Generally, we try to ask that it's completed within a year, and that's why I kind of like to get the approval process done so we don't have to tie them down to say that you have to take possession within a period of time. It still gives them time to get all their, their stuff in order. If for some reason the project fell through, we'll just come back and report that this transfer won't take place, but we're very confident that we think this will go through. But generally, we try to give them a year to complete. But we'll work with them. We want them to be successful.
One more question, if I may. Mr. Slaughter, do we have criteria that they have to have approval for the certain facade to meet the downtown, the historical look of the particular area? Do we put requirements on the properties like that?
We put language that asks that they meet all current code and, I guess standards is the way to probably put it. We can definitely maybe talk with legal and strengthen that language. I would anticipate they're going to be very cooperative and want to put out something that's very complimentary to the avenue. So,
Thank you, Mr. Slaughter.
I will say that I've spoken with the executive director of Central Avenue Betterment Association, and I am confident that he wants to absolutely make this a shining star on Central Avenue, as that whole organization has really been trying to improve the look and the vitality of the avenue and really make it a destination place within our city. So I'm confident it's going to be an excellent project. Seeing no other comments or questions, roll call, please.
Roll call, Walters.
Aye.
Regia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Burrows. Aye. McKiernan.
Aye.
Okay, and then we just have our monthly rehab program update. I think the last one we really didn't have much to talk about, but we've had a couple houses completed. So currently, our contractor pool has grown to 82. We have 98 houses in our inventory. That includes 2 that we just got from tax sale 341. So we're in the process of getting those boarded and inspected. We'll make the determination on rehab or demo recommendation. Our demo number has dropped, so we're down to 20 that are in the process of being demoed. 74 in the rehab program. We have 30 houses that have started rehab. 5 we're waiting closing on. 39 that I would say at least at this point are still sitting there. We did open, as we talked a couple months ago about the Tier 2 group. We have 4 houses that we're currently starting the negotiations with. We got offers on them, so we feel confident that we're going to have 4 more houses that'll be in the rehab. We'll have rehab started soon. And so just wanted to point out that we have just got to our 20th completed rehab. That's 14 for this year, and we also, again, the demos have gone up, so we have now had 18 houses demoed, and that's 13 for this year. So last thing we want to touch is the 2 houses that have just been recently completed. This is 1720 North 18th Street. This was in tax sale 335, and the bid was $10,000 over $400. That does include a it had a federal lien on it, so nobody bid on it. It was a demo property. It was in the demo list. It was somehow gotten back to us, or it was put back in the sale, and that's how we got a hold of it. So this was one we strongly were recommending for demo. It was pretty rough, but it sits right on the corner of the West Height historic neighborhood, so there was some resistance to get it demoed, and we were fortunate that one of our rehabbers took it on, and we thought he did a great job. So this took 10 months to complete. The appraised value at the beginning of the year was just a little over $15,000, and he currently has it listed for $95,000. So we had an open house. We had a lot of people attend. Again, we're very proud of the result. The second house that was completed is 10 McGrew Grove. This was in tax sale 337. Again, a large asking price that nobody bid on. This took about 4.5 months. This was one that we had under contract earlier, and the rehabber basically just told us he couldn't complete it, so we took this back. And then we were fortunate to give it to another one of our stronger rehabbers, and we feel they did a great job. This was appraised at just over $8,000 in January. They had a private appraisal for $130,000, and it's currently renting for $900 a month. So those are the last 2 success stories out of the program. Again, we have 30 that are currently being worked on, and we'll just keep presenting those as they get completed, and we'll just keep pushing through.
Fantastic. Really a great program. And do I remember hearing that at the League of Kansas Municipalities or Kansas Association of Counties at a recent state meeting, there was some discussion about the rehab program?
I believe so.
Okay. There was, and it was very positive discussion. And we received an award, so we're going to find out what that award was, and we're going to tell everybody about that again, because I think this is great that we are innovating here and are really trying to stabilize our neighborhoods. Well done. Thank you. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. I want to add my kudos again to Mr. Slaughter and everyone working with him on that program. I was able to see firsthand the diligence of the second contractor and all the subs that came in on the last house that you're talking about. As they completed the rehab, or went through the rehab process, they also had a lot of respect for the neighbors who were already there in terms of how they picked up and watched what they were doing around the area. So we appreciate that, and again, appreciate everything that you and your staff and co-workers are doing, and that contractor. So thank you.
Excellent. That is the last item on this committee's agenda. With no further items, this committee is adjourned. We will give BPU Board Member Bryant just a moment to make it up to the table, and then we will convene Economic Development and Finance in just a couple of minutes.
Go ahead and get started, committee. I will now call the meeting of the Economic Development and Finance Standing Committee to order. We want to welcome everyone this evening. Public comment is welcome. Anyone wishing to speak on any item on the Standing Committee agenda may do so when the item is up for discussion. You will have up to 3 minutes to state your comments. Please come forward to the microphone. You will be recognized. For accurate recording purposes, we ask all present to speak directly into a microphone. At this time, I would ask the clerk call roll.
Roll call. Bryant?
Here.
Walters? Here. Murguia? Townsend?
I'm present.
McKiernan?
Here.
Burrows?
Did she say? No. Here. It's hard to hear. I've got that vent back there. It's kind of hard to hear. Okay. Thank you. At this particular point in our agenda, before we get started, I've been asked by Commissioner Townsend for just a few moments. Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and for your indulgence. This was not on the agenda, but neither was the tragic murder of 11 innocent people in the Living Tree Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania over this past week. So as so many people from across the country supported our locale in the recent loss of 2 sheriff's deputies, and even years before where we lost police officers, I'm asking just for 11 minutes of silence in memory and recognition of those people, of those victims, their family, friends, and the Pittsburgh community. And it's just a terrible reminder that whatever differences we have should be settled by ballots and not by bullets. So that's my request. Thank you.
We'll take those 11 seconds, Commissioner. Commissioner Townsend, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our first item this evening is the minutes. We have the minutes from the September 10th. Is there a motion for approval?
Move to approve as submitted.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Hearing none, minutes are approved. We have 5 items on the agenda this evening. One of them is for informational purposes only. So we'll start with item 1, and that is the third quarter investment report. And for that, we have, I believe, Andrea Parra, our Deputy Director of Revenue, is here to present. Ms. Parra, floor is yours.
Hello, I'd like to introduce Rick McKessick and Andrea Parra. Rick is our County Treasurer and Director of Revenue, and Andrea is our Deputy Director. We did a reorg, and I'd like to announce Andrea to her new position as the Deputy Director. So, go ahead.
Welcome to committee, Mr. McKessick.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to present the quarter 3 investment report. A few slight changes you might notice we've made to kind of make it more presentable. Looks good. We worked on this week. First item you'll see is the investment summary showing average yield of 1.97%. Average due to maturity will be 482 days. The components for this portfolio are 22% in cash, and then the 78% would be the amount invested. Next slide is going to be some graphs showing the investment portfolio as a breakdown per investment type based on the agency, totaling about 100% of the $237 million we have in our portfolio. 66% or $157 million is in CDs, as it states fully collateralized per our investment policy in the state statute. And the addition is $28 million or 12% is in U.S. agencies, as you see on the right side. Thank you. Next slide is going to be the UG fund category cash balances. Briefly, I'll go over, we have 44% in restricted by bond documents for capital projects, 25% in the general fund combined for reserves to meeting the liquidity needs and contingencies for emergencies. 11% is for operations for the enterprise funds, 16% for special revenue grant and tax levy funds, and then finally 4% in debt service payments. Next slide is going to be an overall compliance slide. One thing to note, the only item we have is a limit within a single agency, which is going to be no, due to Capital Federal holdings are still exceeding the 30% issue threshold for one level of our portfolio. We are going to have to take a few quarters to lower that holding, but we do have a plan in place to make sure that does go back down in compliance within the next 2 or 3 quarters. Thank you. Final slide is going to be the transaction detail slide, which dictates everything that happened this last quarter. We made a few investments, as also a few investments did mature. Total change of right under $50 million. That would be all. Does anyone have any questions for Rick or I?
Any question of staff?
I have one question. The 44% in capital projects funds, would that be funds, or that would be capital projects budgeted in calendar year 2018?
Yes, that would be correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the commission? Anyone from the public wish to have any comments or questions? Seeing none. Thank you. This is for informational purposes only. There'll be no action necessary.
Thank you.
Second item on the agenda this evening is an ordinance amending the 2019 CMIP financing authorization. Tonight, we're privileged to have Debbie Johnson, our Deputy CFO, to make the presentation. And whenever you're ready, Debbie.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next two items, items 2 and 3 on the agenda, are both related to the project authorizations and sale of temporary notes and bonds. So we prepared a short presentation just to go over some of the information to help explain the information that you received in your 2 packets for that information. So we'll just start with the items that we're requesting approval for tonight. Item number 2 is a resolution for the CMIP financing authorization. The resolution is asking for to amend the 2018 through 2023 CMIP, authorize various public improvements, authorize the issuance of general obligation bonds and temporary notes to finance those improvements, requesting the Public Building Commission of the Unified Government to issue leasehold revenue bonds for the cost of certain improvements, and also authorizing 1 or more lease purchase agreements for financing the acquisition and installation of equipment. And I will just note that the lease information is recorded on the last 2 pages of your project authorization packet. Those are all the lease agreements, the leased equipment that's identified in the CMIP for 2019. I will note that each project can only have debt up to the amount approved. It restricts total debt of the project for the life of the project. It takes into account any previous bondings that we may have done, current financings, and potential future bondings. It also restricts total debt of each project for the current debt financing. So this just shows, this graph shows what is in the current CMIP. The next couple of slides all relate to item number 2 in the agenda. So this one shows for 2018, we amended the budget, the CMIP budget, by $3.4 million, and we've broken it out down here at the bottom to show the different classes. So in 2016, we had city debt projects of a little over 16 million, enterprise and PBC debt of almost 53 million, and that totals, along with special revenue projects of 6.5 million, totals 75.5 million for 2018. For 2019, we've got the breakdown here for each one of those projects. The city debt was 13.5, enterprise and PBC at 66, and special revenue projects of 11 million for a total of 91.3 million. This just helps to show the items that are, the project amounts that are listed in your packet. In each one of these items has an amount, and so we wanted to show how we come up with those amounts. For individual projects, the total authorization would be, if it's a project that started in 2018, the total authorization should be the total of the CMIP. If the project started prior to 2018, the authorization could be larger because we might have approved amounts in previous years. For annual projects, we only approve the current year, because annual projects, the type of project can change each year or the location, so we only approve the annuals for each individual year. Wanted to just note, in your packet, the projects are all highlighted in multiple colors. There's pink, blue, and orange. Just wanted to talk about that a little bit. The blue projects that are highlighted in blue, and there is a key on the first page of the project authorizations. The projects highlighted in blue are all projects that were previously authorized, and there's no change to the description or the amount. Any project highlighted in pink indicates a new project that's being financed for the first time, that there was no previous financing. And projects that are highlighted in orange indicate that there was a change from the previous authorization, which could either be the name or description may have changed or the amount may have changed. And I did want to just note, we put some information here. Only expenses that are listed in the description may be paid or reimbursed with debt proceeds up to the specific amount. So if there is an excess amount on a particular project, you cannot just take the proceeds and apply it to another project without amending the description and reauthorizing those funds for the new project. As the project nears completion, we do sometimes refine the description. We may have listed we had a whole list of potential locations. Maybe the funding only covered a portion of those. So then we would go back at the end when we did the permanent financing and refine the description to include the locations that the money was spent on. This is a list of all the projects in your packet that were highlighted in orange. So what I went through and did was we just listed the original authorization, if there was a change in the authorization, and then what that final authorization would be. As you can see that some of them didn't have a change in the authorization, they were just a change in the description or the project name. And I did want to note the facility parking maintenance 2017 and 2018, these two projects here, the description was updated, but we discovered that there were potential locations that were left off. They were on the description previously, and somehow they were omitted when we updated the description. So we would like to go ahead and add those descriptions back to those particular projects. Those project authorizations are listed on page 8 and 9 of your packet. I also did want to note railroad crossing improvements down here. We also discovered this project was highlighted in blue when it should have been orange. It was a reimbursement resolution for 2018, so it did not have a previous description. We just forgot to change the color. So the next couple of slides relate to item number 3, which is the sale resolution, which lists all of the projects that could potentially be financed in 2019. And I went through and just started with 2017 and reconciled the amounts. So last year at this time, we were approving the resolutions for the 2018 bond issue. We approved a sale resolution of about $114 million. In 2018, we financed temporary notes of $65 million, and we bonded $35.4 million. So the projects that were authorized but not issued totaled $13.7 million. Those projects were in the budget. It could be that either the project didn't move forward or they realized they didn't need the financing in that particular year. Maybe there was a delay with the project, so they may have just opted not to issue the funds at that time. And then the second table here, what I've done is reconciled the 2018 temp notes to the amount that's in your 2019 sale resolution. So we start with the $65 million in temp notes. Those projects, we've had the temporary note is issued for a year, so there's additional interest on the temp note. And then we've added in projects that were included in the CMIP for 2018 that were not financed last year. This is a net number, this 1.3. We had additional projects that were added, and we also had some projects that were taken off. So this amount here is a net number. The 2018 reimbursement resolutions, which I'm going to go over here in the next couple of slides, are projects where we issued a reimbursement resolution last year, we didn't finance them because we didn't either have the scope of the work identified or the locations, so we couldn't issue the financing. So we issued a reimbursement resolution, which allows them to, once they identify a project, they can go out for bid, they can issue contracts. Having that authority in the current year allows them to be able to do that. And then once they identify the project and get it set up, we can go ahead and then issue the funding in the next year. Then we have the 2019 CMIP. This amount reconciles back to the slide that I showed a few slides ago that had the total for the 2019 CMIP. And then we also have a couple of amendments for 2019, which I'll go over in a later slide, projects that were not included in the CMIP when we approved the budget in August. So we'll talk about those. And since this total is for the temporary notes, not the PBC projects, I've subtracted out the PBC total that was included in this 91 million. And then I've also subtracted out the 2019 reimbursement resolutions of 2.5 million, and I'll talk about those also.
So, Ms. Johnson, just for clarification, you've subtracted that 9.5 million off of the total, and that's reflective in the total of the 155 million that's re-encrested.
That's correct. On your sale resolution, there's a separate table for the PBC projects, so I didn't include them in this total.
Are there any questions at this time during the presentation? Anyone may have? Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Johnson. I just have one question. Maybe about within the last couple of months, the Board of Commissioners approved funding to facilitate new roadway improvements in relation to a new school that's going to be built off of Parallel. Is that amount anywhere in here, and if so, where?
Yes, that's included in this amendments to the CMIP, which I'm going to go over. There's several projects that are included in that 4.8 million, so I will talk about those here in a minute.
Thank you.
So this next slide just shows the reimbursement resolutions. As we said, reimbursement resolutions are issued when projects where locations are unable to be determined ahead of time, so we don't finance them. But approving them allows us, once the project is identified, to bid the project and enter into contracts. So these are the 4 projects that were in 2018 that total 1.15 million. They've identified the projects now. None of the money has been spent yet, but they've got, this allows them to move forward, and we'll finance it with the 2019 issue. And for 2019, these 6 projects are identified. They don't have project descriptions now, so we're issuing reimbursement resolutions in the event that during 2019, they identify projects that they plan to move forward. They could amend their descriptions next year and issue in 2020 if they have a project to move forward. If a project doesn't develop, then we would just, if it's an annual project, we would just let it go, and they would issue their next year's allotment.
Okay. Please continue.
So here, this shows the amendments to the CMIP. None of these projects were included in the CMIP that was approved in August. We have the downtown grocery, and I've listed some of the meetings that were where we presented the downtown grocery. 36th and Ohio bridge replacement. This one was approved in the budget in 2021. It was stated, I believe, at the Public Works Standing Committee that this project needed to be moved forward. So what they want to do is replace there was a project in there, the 11th Street Bridge over Jersey Creek. They want to replace that project with
the 36th and Ohio Bridge replacement. And so this would be budget neutral. The 11th Street Bridge was authorized, and we issued $410,000 for that project. So that's why we have $410,000 here. I will note that in the project authorization, we are asking for $700,000 in authorization. In the event that the project costs more than the $410,000, they would have the ability to use other funds or reimburse themselves in the future with debt proceeds if the cost exceeds the $410,000. Here's the $2 million for the school district road improvements, and then there was an additional $1 million that has been put in for the juvenile center improvements. So the total impact to the budget is $5.4 million, because I did not include the $410,000 because it's being replaced by another project. It's replacing another project.
Ms. Johnson, I do have a question for a point of clarification. The $410,000, you're requesting $700,000, but that doesn't add up to the $5.4 million.
Right, for that project, we're requesting authority for $700,000. But we only want to issue $410,000 because that's the amount that was issued for the 11th Street Bridge project. The reason we're asking for $700,000, if in the event that this project goes up toward the cost up towards the $700,000, I think Public Works believes that they may be able to fund this with either emergency bridge repair. But if we authorize it at the $700,000, they would have the ability to reimburse themselves with future debt proceeds if they didn't have additional funds.
Okay. I want to make sure I'm able to give the committee and the community the answers to that question, that when they're seeing a request for $700,000, but they only see $410,000, it's not reflected in the total budget. I just want to ensure that we're able to clearly communicate as to what the request is and the total amount will be for bonding authority for 2019 CMIP plan.
If I may, I think the totals you're looking at, the other projects add up to the 5.4. The 410 nor the 700 are included as a budget impact because adding this bridge project, but we're removing a different project and substituting this one in place of it. So there's no true budget impact. It's an addition you have to make to approve this project, but no financial change.
Thank you, Mr. Bach.
You want to add that? Okay.
Ms. Johnson, please continue.
Hello, I just would like to also add that the downtown grocery store, $2.4 million, is going to be recovered from our pro forma states that it's going to be, the repayment will be covered by future sales tax from the project itself. It won't be dependent on our mill levy for city projects.
What length of time will that payback occur?
20 years, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, this slide shows, so temporary notes have a statutory limit of 4 years. We issue temporary notes for a 1-year term, and then at the end of that year, we determine whether the project's going to be bonded or if we're going to reissue another temp note. Commissioner Burrows, you had asked what were the oldest projects that we had outstanding, and currently the relocation of sewer maintenance facility and the pump station elimination are the two that we currently have outstanding. Relocation of sewer maintenance, $5 million was authorized and issued between the years of 2014 through 2016. After talking with Public Works, we've determined that we are going to pay down the full outstanding amount. There is $500,000 available in that project for design and consultant for them to continue to work on the project, but we're going to pay down the remaining amount. On pump station elimination, $5.75 million was authorized, of which $4.75 million has been issued. The project is complete now.
they're going to bond the total amount spent, which was 1.7 million, and pay down the remaining 3 million.
And do we know what the savings would be by doing it this way? Or is it just going to expedite the project?
Or,
You mean no interest?
We're paying down the bonds.
well, we're paying them down because we're not going to spend any more on, at least on the pump station elimination, the project's complete with the 1.75. So we're going to pay down, we'll just pay, we've already got 3 million sitting in our account because we've issued a temporary note on it. So we're going to pay that temporary note back, and we won't issue another one.
So we'll be saving the interest off the temporary note moving forward.
That's correct. Right.
7.3 million.
So we put together a tentative calendar for our 2019 financing. I will just note we've got several dates for information that we need to provide to our financial advisor and bond counsel. Currently, we've got the sale of notes and bonds scheduled for the week of February 11th. And I believe at that time, you know, earlier I presented the information on how much we authorized, but we didn't spend. At that time, I think we could probably, when we do the sale, we could also give you a breakdown of where we started out with authorizing $155 million, exactly how much of that went to temporary notes, how much we bonded, and how much we didn't issue.
And thank you for that. I think it's very important that the committee understands the cost of doing business for these projects. And if we can avoid bonding additional dollars, it saves us interest, which in turn allows us to address projects that may not demand the bonding that may have been utilized in the past. So I appreciate the time you've given us in putting your testimony together. I do have one question, if I may, then I'll ask questions of the committee. You gave I'm going back to page 7, the 91,392, the 91 million. That was the 2019. That was the 2019 CMIP approved. What was 2018?
The 2018.
Did I miss it somewhere?
We have the total in here that was approved in the amended budget. The 75.5 million was in 2018.
And that's what was bonded. That's not what the total CMIP request was it?
No, this is the total CMIP request right here.
Okay.
And the same as the 91,392. This is the amount. These are all the projects that were approved in the CMIP.
I noticed in the out years across the top for the city debt projects that it's reducing itself. Starting with 2020, it begins to reduce itself on into 2023, that debt reduction, unless we take on additional CMIP projects and bond additional dollars. Would that be a correct statement?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Committee, any questions of our presenters this evening?
I have a question. Based on this revised CMIP and the funding, I'm recalling our auditor, when they give us their annual audit report, always cautions us about the amount of debt we have. So what will their reaction be to our action tonight if we approve this? Will it be a positive, or will they, again, express concern about the amount of debt we're incurring?
Well, I'm not sure the auditor actually mentions the level of debt. It's
Yeah,
rating agencies that mention it.
I've never heard a report from the rating agency, so what I was hearing was from the auditor.
So there is a table at the end of our CAFR that outlines the level of debt we have, and it's that graph that I've showed in the past. The credit rating agencies are concerned about our level of debt, but I did want to point out that when we're talking about the level of debt of the unified government with respect to the credit rating agencies and the CAFR, they're only really talking about that top line there. The second line is the enterprise and the PBC debt, mainly the enterprise debt. That's sewer related, and those sewer, a good portion of that is sewer related. And that sewer related debt is our investments that are being made in order to bring our infrastructure up to standard based on the, CP, thank you. And it's paid for or repaid back from the charges that we are collecting for sewer revenues. The one project that actually we're undertaking in 19 and in 20, which you can see is a significant increase here, right? Is that one project that's roughly 70 million between those 2 years, and that's the biosolids project, which actually is an investment that's going to actually pay for itself, and we've presented information on that in the past. So it wouldn't require an additional increase in the sewer rates. So that's the investment that we're doing in order to address the biosolids treatment in that facility.
Well, so back to my question, whether it's the rating agency or the auditor, will somebody say, good job, you guys are really listening and addressing this issue, or will they say, gee, we're still concerned or perhaps even more concerned about the level of debt? Which way are we going, you think?
Well, the 13.5 is actually a reduction from the previous amount, and
So you think they'll say, good job? No?
I don't know if we can get an attaboy out of them, but I would say it would not be something they'd come back and put us in the other direction to say, at least it would show that we're holding the line on what we're doing with debt expenditures. Typically, they don't seem to comment a whole lot on it until we start to show a trend over a number of years.
Okay.
yeah.
Just a very minor, I really like all the information that you've presented tonight. I think it makes it far more clear than it has in the past. I do have one request. If you could put PBC debt on a line of its own, I would really like that. You can lump all the other enterprise funds together, but I tend to kind of look at that PBC debt as a individual line item itself. I see that there is a request to increase the juvenile facility. This might be a question for Doug. The last time we had a conversation about this, there were some cost savings initiatives underway to try to get back to the original budget. Can you update us on where we are with that, or maybe expand on the need to go another 3.7 million on that project?
Sure. And I believe that the request for the additional money is only $1 million over what you've already. So the 3.7 was, we brought that to you last summer, and we authorized up the 2.5 million additional. So we needed another 1.2 to get it done completely. We went through, did the bidding with it. I think it was a little more than that actually, but where we ended up to finish the courtrooms on the third floor and all the access points to them, we were 1.2 million short. And Jeff, or was it 1.6 million short. I'm sorry. So that's the amount that we don't have in the budget today as part of that. And what we're bringing forward is we have gone through it, looked at some ways to try to find other revenues. I'm still hoping maybe there's some projects that in this year that we could, that are related over into the jail areas and such, that we could move some of that money into this project to finish it. We do have, that's where my 1.2 million was. We have 1.2 million in contingency funding in that project, though I'm reluctant to allocate that to this until we get a little further than we are, because as you know by seeing it, we're drilling in the ground. We're drilling in the ground today, and typically that's where you find a lot of things that might come up and cause you some overruns on your budget that you weren't anticipating. I think in sitting down with Mr. Fisher and John Kelly from Facilities, we still have a high confidence that we can find the funding somewhere else, though and we should be able to have that identified by the time we get to the bond issue, to be able to tell you that one way or another. Though I would like to include that additional $1 million is what you're including in today over where we were authorized from last summer. Include that additional $1 million in the event we don't get that identified. And then I can tell you, I'd like to go ahead and issue that additional temp note money for it, and then we can finish the project as we go through it. It is one, as we've met with the judicial members, they're very adamant about seeing us get this done. And I've tried to sit down with them and work through where we're at and explain to them the commitment that you all have, that we want to finish the project, but we are trying to find it within all savings. But I'm kind of putting this $1 million in there as a backup. We'll know before we cut the bonds on February 28th, or at least that's the plan.
So, as proposed, we've gone away from not finishing some of the courtrooms. We're now going to finish those courtrooms?
Yes, if we're authorized with this, we will be able to get it all done.
Well, I think that's good, because it will only be more expensive to come back at a later date and finish those courtrooms. But you know, anything we can do to get closer to our original budget would certainly be appreciated, I'm sure, by all the commission.
Understood.
That's all I had.
Commissioner, I'll just note, I can send you a revised breakout for the PBC.
Oh, thank you.
2019, the PBC total was $7,075,000 and $3,150,000 for 2020.
Any other questions? Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, do you recall what year the 11th Street Jersey Creek project, the CMIP money for that will be moved to? Since the Ohio Bridge that was approved in 2021 is coming forward, where is that going? How's that going to impact the Jersey Creek? What year should we look for that?
Commissioner, I'll go ahead and answer that. At this point, Public Works isn't recommending putting it back in the budget just yet. We're waiting until the Northeast Master Plan works itself out and we figure out what the ultimate plan is for Jersey Creek. What we were hoping to do is figure out if Jersey Creek's going to go back to an open channel or some other design. That way we can put a bridge that fits with the elements that's going to be there. We don't want to go back in and put a box that's going to last for 100 years and make it not fit with what we're really trying to do with the Northeast. That's why we decided that this funding would be the appropriate one to move. Once the Northeast Master Plan fleshes itself out a little more, we'll have a better idea of that and we'll probably put it back in somewhere close to 2023. The bridge is in structurally sound shape, so no worries there. This was just the oldest one left on Jersey Creek. So that's why it was next to replace, but it doesn't really need it at this time. And we don't want to put something out that's not going to fit with what we're really trying to do as a whole organization to the Northeast.
Okay, I followed that logic. I'm wondering about the money. If you decide to, that there's some improvement that will fit within the plan, where will that leave us? Will we have to then allocate additional money? In other words, there's no placeholders, what I'm hearing you say.
That is correct. It'll be just like anything else we do in an out year. As most everybody's kind of aware, our current CMIP is really solid for the next 2 to 3 years. Those fourth years are kind of out there a little bit still, so we've got some playroom. If you want to flip back to the bond issue, or the little graph at the bottom of the page. You can see how in like the city debt projects, it does trend to go down out towards 2023. I know we've been trying to stay under that 15 million line for city debt projects. So there's a little bit of room there. Also, what we could do at that time is reallocate, annual bridge repair money or other funding sources, some street repair money, since it will have a street or something on top of it, to make up for those funds. So it won't just be a new whole increase. We'll do the best we can to keep it as minimal as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? How much of the I noticed the 91,392,000. How much of that is associated to the sewer and biosolids solids plant? $20 million?
It's 20 million,
That's for 2019 alone.
yes.
That's why the big bump between 18, 19, 20, and by 21, it should
Right.
be in,
For that project alone, 2019 is 20 million, 2020 is 40 million, and then another 10 million in 2021.
so could you give us an aggregate number over a 3-year period, the cost of that project?
Yeah, the total 70.5 million.
Thank you. It was mentioned earlier about a contingency reserve, Mr. Bach. Do you, in reference to CMIP, do we have what we refer to as a contingency reserve set aside for CMIP?
We do contingency reserves on a per project basis. So depending on the type of project, what we build into it is we have our budget estimate, what we believe the cost of the project will be, and then we'll do a percentage based of contingency with each one. So when you go through all the projects through the course of the year, and Mr. Fisher can probably speak to this better, but some of them we eat it all up, some of them we don't spend it, and that's kind of the variable that works within those projects.
Are those contingency reserves bonded money?
Typically, they're in the temp note, right?
Right, the project's usually done as a temp note, and then if they don't get into the contingency, then we would pay that amount down at the end of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Now, the exception to that, if it's Public Building Commission, those are bonds all the time, because we cannot do temp notes on those. So in the case of the Juvenile Center, that's Public Building Commission, so that will be a bond. But for most of the projects, you're seeing them as temp notes, and then we can clean it up before we ever go to bonding.
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the public at this time? Let the record show no one has approached to speak.
Move to approve the resolution amending the 2018 through 2023 CMIP.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the CMIP for 2019. Clerk will call roll.
Roll call. Bryant.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Murguia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
LaRose.
Aye.
Move to approve the resolution authorizing the offering for sale of municipal temporary notes and general obligation bonds.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. We need to repeat the motion? No. Seeing none, will clerk call roll.
Roll call. Bryant.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Murguia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
LaRose.
No, I'm sorry, aye.
Maybe we didn't.
Sorry. Wanted to make sure you were still awake down there, Mr. Bach. Okay. Moving on to item 4. We're making great progress. So at this particular point, we have Kathleen Von Atchen, our CFO, is here to make the presentation reference to the Rainbow Village development. Ms. Von Atchen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. So we are going to present, this will be a quick one on the Rainbow Village, a little update on that. The reason we're meeting to discuss this project today, even though the project's completed, is because we'd like to amend the development agreement. We ask for your support on that. The resolution before you is to approve the amendment to the agreement, and the only change to the development agreement is to allow for transient guest tax revenues to be remitted to the developer as a pay-go basis for reimbursement of eligible project costs. This would be done instead of issuing special obligation municipal bonds. So there is no change at all to the proposed, incentives of this project. It's clear, just merely just a change in the means of payment to the developer. Just so you know, just a reminder, back about a month ago, the commission approved revisions to the transient guest tax ordinance. It broadened the language to allow for support of other potential convention centers in our area. It also provided the Board of Commissioners with more budgetary flexibility, and that's due to the fact that we are now collecting more revenues, transient guest tax revenues in the Transient and Convention Center Fund as a result of the payoff of the STAR bonds that took place in December 2016. So now we have a little bit more money coming in, quite a bit more money, and that reflects that we, have more funds to dedicate for tourism promotion. And so the ordinance does establish at a minimum level $1,050,000 for promotion of tourism, but of course you can, through the annual budget process, approve more than that. Also, it added language to strengthen the collection of short-term rentals or Airbnbs, and so that we can collect that transient guest tax. It's a project finance we'll be looking at developing in the future. And the very last thing that was of most importance and relevance to this agenda tonight is that it allowed us to reimburse developers of hotels, those that promote tourism, to be paid on a pay-go basis rather than being forced to issue bonds and incur the cost of bond counsel and investments and interest on bonds. We'd rather just collect that money from the state on a quarterly basis and then remit it back to the developer up to the cap as prescribed in the development agreement, which you all approve. So, all right, so just to give you a recap, this project was completed in April of 2018. It's the developer's Rainbow Legacy Investors. It is on 34th and Rainbow Boulevard. It comprises of an 89-room hotel. It also did some refurbishment to the Applebee's restaurant, which is next to it. The total project was $16.8 million. That's what the developer paid. They estimated that it would have 25 jobs permanent in the hotel and retain the 30 jobs that exist in the restaurant itself. And there's the location of the project. And since over the past few years, here's the various actions taken by the commission, and with the final, which began in the late 2015. And the project itself was opened, the Home 2 Suites in Applebee's at the University Village in Kansas City, Kansas was opened in April of this year, 2018. And here's some beautiful pictures of the facility that is in operations now. You can see the interior of the hotel itself, the pool, the rooms, the lobby area, and then of course the Applebee's as well. So it's doing really well. And overall, the project sources and uses included, for the $16 million, included $3 million in private equity, $10 million in private debt, and then incentives of roughly $4 million over the course of the 20 to 22 year period. Each of these various, I have more details on each of these incentives, but for the most part, nothing has changed in this development agreement. The only thing that's changed is the means that we're going to be reimbursing the developer, which, by the way, the developer is here tonight. Ken Lee from Poisonality is representing the developer, and if you have any questions, he'd be happy to answer them for you. There was a question about whether we've used tourism promotion or TGT revenues for tourism promotion in the past, and I just wanted to point out here that First off, Village West Star Bonds, various Star Bonds have transient guest tax as a component of their revenue pledge, and that is allowed by state statute. So some of those bonds have already been paid off, but we didn't want to go into each and every one, just, all those Star Bonds in Village West to have those. And then the last 39th and Rainbow, Project Area 2, we issued bonds in 2015 for $4.3 million for 20 years. That was an 84-room hotel as part of the project, and some $2.3 million in transient gas tax revenues were pledged for that. And let's see. Yeah, this project also included property tax and sales tax increment. So we asked for your approval of this amendment to the development agreement, which only allows for us to, in lieu of issuing bonds, to reimburse the developer on a pay-go basis.
Any question?
Mr. Walters?
I guess this might be for Mr. Bach. So is this going to be a trend that we're going to start funding hotel financing through this kind of a mechanism? I assume this was our idea.
Well, this was what was, as we worked through the development agreement with the developer, this was one of the proposed solutions to do it, was to use the transient guest tax funding for it. I think one of the, maybe the positive sides of it is they're just using, it's just projected revenue that they're newly creating within their project area.
Oh.
So we're not using our other money.
Yeah.
So looking at it just from what's new dollars coming into the market because of the hotel, it's kind of like looking at it from a TIF perspective. You say this is sales tax dollars that wouldn't otherwise created. So when they came in, they did it. And really going to it from the tool that Kathleen's put forward, I like a lot better, because then we don't have to worry about the whole bonding. So this is the structure of how that deal was done before. When we put the deal together, this just allows us to do the pay-go versus the bonds, which we hadn't got to issue yet. So it works out well.
Well, I'm glad you clarified that it's only from this project, because I had the impression that we were asking other hotels to collect tax so that they could build competing hotels, which didn't seem like a good idea, but it is interesting that other hotels will be contributing money to tourism funds that this hotel will not be, because it will be only using that money to finance its own project. Would that be fair?
That would be accurate. Of course, and as Kathleen pointed out, that was the philosophy we used as we went through the Village West area. And now our tourism fund is much more robust than it ever has been, because we're able to go through, pay off. We use that tool to help create new development, and now all the new hotels as they come online, and all the existing ones are paying into this fund. So like the new Homewood Suites is just open immediately, starts to pay in.
Thank you.
Mr. Bach, if I may, do we have, I know the language says a minimum level of resources of $1,050,000. Do we have a ceiling or a period of time, a time frame in which we can only allocate dollars? Is there a ceiling of dollars that can be allocated over a period of time?
No, sir.
Okay.
I mean, it's only ceiling is based on the actual revenue that comes in.
Okay. Well, I think it's an innovative way to I guess, close the gap. I'm just one of those, I just hate to see our revenue, future revenue, go to pay for projects that wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. I'd like to see that revenue come to other additional issues. Any comments from the public? Let it be point of record, nobody has approached. So with that, the action we need to take, clerk will call roll.
I move for approval of this resolution.
Second.
Okay. Motion been made and seconded. Now clerk will call roll. Thank you.
Roll call. Bryant?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Regia?
Aye.
Townsend?
Aye.
Kiernan?
Aye.
Burrows?
Aye. Okay, committee, that brings us to our last item of this evening, and it consists of several actions for the Metropolitan Avenue Avenue redevelopment project. And this evening, we have Catherine Carter, our Interim Economic Development Director, who will be making the presentation.
Commissioner, I think I'll probably need to jump in here. We've had some changes to this project that we need to discuss tonight.
Mr. Bach, the floor is yours.
And Catherine, I'd ask if you'd go ahead and put the map of the project area up. As the commissioners are aware, and this is some information that really some changes have come to our attention here in the last, well, a lot of it today. But the property that where the star is the project area site. This is Kansas Department of Transportation property. We had an agreement that we entered into them with several years ago, stating we would be able to market this property and come back with a development agreement. That agreement had expired during the term we were going through this. We were working through this with the developer that we would get it renewed with the state. In fact, the agreement that's in your packet tonight has a provision within it that contemplates that it's subject to getting that renewed with the state of Kansas. I think both our sides thought that this was just what would be more of a routine move, that the state was very willing to continue to have this property in the project to be redeveloped. However, as we hit the end of the week, I asked Mr. Waters, our attorney, to just contact them and just make sure everything was good to get that done. And we've hit a couple of snags in that regard. One being what we did in this process is through our procurement process is we get unsolicited proposals come in that meets our procurement. Their statement was you would need to have formal RFPs done. However, that wasn't the biggest clause, because that's one I think we can work through, other than the fact we would need to do that in advance of approving it. But the bigger thing that it came to us now with was, as they're working in the 18th Street corridor area, and I think you're all aware that 18th Street's been down, they started a study review process on October 26th, and they've identified the area from I-70 all the way down to Steel Road, which includes this. And they stated until we complete our review, our study review, we're not going to renew this or open this option up for you to put anything on that property, because they may need to come into this site and expand the highway in a way like they never thought they would before. So with that, they said, you don't have an option on that property until that happens, and we'll be studying it through August of next year. Well, Patrick had some conversation regarding the RFP. I called up directly to talk to the staff members today to push for that issue and make sure that's where they were, and receive this back from them in writing at about 2:30 this afternoon. So, or 2 o'clock. So fairly late breaking from that perspective. I will say it was a mistake on our part by not going to the state earlier and saying, okay, we want to make sure we have this renewal in place. And then we could have brought that discussion to a head to see where we were at. We notified the developers this afternoon as soon as we found out this was going to be a problem. And it was actually right when we started that conversation earlier today. So with that, the item we have in front of you right now, I no longer have the authority to put this ground in play. So I don't have that option from KDOT to do this. And until we get any different ruling from them or clarification of that agreement, I don't think we can take action to put this giveaway property that's not ours.
Mr. Bach, do we have options available if this ground is not available? Do we have options available? Maybe that would be something I would ask of not only you, but of staff possibly, what our options might be.
Catherine?
So there are a couple options in terms of pad sites that are nearby. There's one right in front of the Save-A-Lot there, and Jeff can also speak to this, and also in front of the Walmart, which is obviously now in place. So they are, I think, not the most ideal, as the developer obviously wanted to have it directly, right off the highway, but there are some other development sites, pad sites, ready to go in the general vicinity.
Well, if I understood correctly, should the Kansas Department of Transportation choose to modify 18th Street Expressway, there's no guarantee that that's where an exit will be anyway, moving forward. If I understood Mr. Bach correctly with the news from KDOT in reference to long-term plans for 18th Street.
They could make modifications around here. I mean, I know most of the bridge work that the focus on is the area that heads across all the railroad areas and stuff like that, but it does come back in and connect directly over Metropolitan, as you can see. So that could have some impact on the interchange. That's what they come up with in the end.
Thank you, Mr.
We won't know that until they get done with their study.
If I
Well,
may.
in light of, yes, would you identify
Sure.
yourself, please?
Ferguson Properties. I'm acting as the developer hired by ABC for this project. I've been in communications with the retailer, Wendy's Pizza Hut, in the past 3 years working here. We have tried and tried and tried to push them originally to the site next to the Save-A-Lot, which would be the easiest deal for all of us to do. And it's the retailer's direction that picked the site off of 18th Street that we're talking about right now. We've been told time and time again that it's either that site or no site, no deal for them, just because of the ease and on access points from 18th Street and the visibility.
So an alternative's not viable is what I'm done.
We have a letter of intent agreement with them on the site right there, and there's been no alternative sites that they would support.
Commissioner Murguia.
Yeah, so I just have a couple of comments to make. For those of you that didn't necessarily understand what Mr. Bach said, I think I might be able to break it down a little easier for people. So in my role as the executive director of the Argentine Neighborhood Development Association, I worked with Governor Brownback directly to acquire this ground where the Star is located. An agreement was drafted, and that land was to be given to the unified government to hold until the development could move forward. We're all aware of what I will always believe to be a lot of political delays in this development and a lot of political shenanigans in regard to moving this forward over the last 2.5 years. And now I find it very interesting that we were just here a month ago, October 1st, and we were told by County Administrator Doug Bach and our staff that there were 3 issues that needed to be resolved. However, they were such minor issues that all they needed to do was get them included in the development agreement. They were pretty sure that it'd be ready for a vote on the 29th. Since October the 1st, I have received a draft copy of the development agreement that had new issues on it, something involving a reversionary clause that was never mentioned in the October 1st meeting. There were additional concerns. So in addition to the original 3 items that were not supposed to be any big issue and it was supposed to come for vote on the 29th tonight, we have all these other issues. And then, interestingly enough, as of today, somebody decided to do their job and call the state and find out whether or not there was anything that needed to be done on this ground, where it's now apparently held up again. I just find it interesting that we can move through at lightning speed $6 million grocery stores and multi-million-dollar projects in western Wyandotte County, and for 2.5 years, we can't move through 2 fast food restaurants. I just don't understand that. The other thing that I am extremely concerned about is that for those of you that follow politics at all or follow the news media, the Kansas City Star has repeatedly written nasty negative articles about myself as commissioner and my role as the executive director of ONDA. And I've ignored those for a lot of years. However, this latest article that was written today, I'm not going to ignore. One of the comments that was made in here is it's supposedly a quote, according to Steve Baccarat, the writer in The Star, that he quoted our mayor as saying, again, no private money in this development deal. That is not true. There is private development money in this deal. This deal requires ABC to go out and get a bank loan to construct this building, all of which will not be paid back with just government incentives. There will be the tenants, Wendy's and Pizza Hut, will pay rent, which will be used to buy down that debt as well. And Wendy's and Pizza Hut are absolutely private entities with private cash. So that is flat out inaccurate, and I would hope that our government would ask for a retraction of that completely inaccurate statement. Not to mention that Mr. Baccarat writes that this property is jointly owned by the Kansas Department of Revenue and the unified government. Obviously, it's not jointly owned, or we would not need to get permission from anybody at the state level for this property. And the Kansas Department of Revenue is not the Kansas Department of Transportation, which is who the ground is owned by. So again, Mr. Baccarat is inaccurate, as he routinely is in the articles that he writes about myself and Wyandotte County and the development in Argentine. So I think it's very bad journalism. I think it's bad, rotten politics. And I thought we were past all of that, and I'm incredibly disappointed because we're about to see projects from Village West come back in front of us that are complete failures that are going to require hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of annual subsidy, which is just shocking to me. Yet I will bet you it will not take 2.5 years to make sure that those deals are taken care of. It's very disappointing to me that this continues to go on, that this one small area has gone above and beyond to raise money and to make things happen for their neighborhood. This community has worked very hard to make these things happen in their community. The Walmart, the market did not drive the Walmart. The market did not drive the Save-A-Lot. It was a community of small group of committed citizens that came together and actually went to retailers and knocked on doors. And asked retailers to come here and be a grocery store here. There was no unified government that stepped up and wrote a check and said, here's $6 million, please come and build a grocery store and locate in Argentine. There wasn't even anybody in Wyandotte County in the unified government that went and called anybody about bringing a grocery store to Argentine. That had to be done by me and people within our community in the Argentine neighborhood. Again, I go back to what I said on the October 1st meeting. All we're asking for in District 3 is fairness and decency. And as we move forward with this project, I'll contact the governor again, and we'll see how the project moves forward. But I will be looking at every economic development deal in the future that moves forward much more closely in regard to the amount of subsidy that it takes. Because people in District 3, they pay taxes also, just like everybody else does. So they're entitled to that. There are a number of people that came here this evening. I'm sure there are some people that are here that are in favor of this project. I'm sure there are some people that are not. But given that they took their time to come out, I'd like to give the people that are here the opportunity to tell you what their opinion is. I think there are some, like I said, that are here in favor and some that are not in favor.
Should someone choose to speak, we have a 3-minute time limit, and I will hold you to that time limit. Before we do that, are there any questions from the commission members, any comments from the committee? Mr. Bach, in reference to the late news today, will we have a legal document stating such from the Kansas Department of Transportation in reference to the land and the RFP proposal being denied?
I have a letter that came out from KDOT today, and then they'll go back through and verify with their head engineer and verify where they're at with the study and that this will be part of it. If they pull it from it and say, even though it is within the corridor, the study area, I don't know, you can pull that up. There's that last map that was put on there where they showed us what the, they sent this to me this afternoon. No, I think it's the one after that. It's the presentation after this. It's just a one sheet. They showed me this. They said, here's the study areas. You can see it extends down from up there by the PQ Corporation and crosses the Kansas River and goes all the way to Steel Road. So they said this is all within the study area. And with that, they're going to restrict it. If they go through that and their chief engineer determines that this property does not need to be held as part of it and they can release it, they would let us know of that. But as of today, it is held within that area.
Thank you, Mr. Bach. In reference to Commissioner Bregia's request about public comment, before we move to that, I would like to ask staff a question, or legal possibly. In light of the information and in response to the developer stating there's no other alternative, Mr. Bach, you're saying you can't advance this to us tonight? That that this has impacted the project being discussed and advanced this evening through this committee?
Yes, sir. I mean, for the property that we have in play, I do not, I mean, one is we thought we have a provision that says subject to this being done, but now I've been told affirmatively by KDOT it's not going to have a renewal right now, and we need to go through, wait through the study period process, and then look to do an RFP process after that. So those are kind of a double hit that we'll be working through as we go into the next phase of this. But I would continue to try to work with Mr. Sharp and see if there is a way for us to know whether there is another alternative. And I understand what they've told him, but I think probably until we know affirmatively from KDOT, if they were to come back and say this property is absolutely out of play and see what they're going to do with that interchange, it might change that perspective.
So the question before us is, do we, if we're not going to, can't take action on this project this evening, would we be remiss to not allow the public to comment on the issue before us?
Well, Mr. Chairman, you've opened the discussion, so I think you're fine to have a hearing.
Wonderful. I wanted to.
I'm just requesting that people be allowed to speak. It's just a public hearing.
And it was not my intent not to allow that to happen. I just want to ensure that we're not sending the false message that this may advance this evening, that I'd never want to stifle public comment. So with that, we'll open the floor to public comment. And if you would be mindful to please mention your name and address and make sure it's clear, and you have 3 minutes, so please.
Hi, my name is John Aldevote. I live in Edwardsville. I'm a member of the Edwardsville City Council. I'm also, or a planning commission out there. I'm also on your landmark commission. And I was originally excited about this project because I have many clients in this area. As a realtor, I'm a realtor with Reese Nichols Roberts. I'm an associate broker there. And I have many clients in this area. And this type of project enhances the value of that for the citizens who want to move there. And it enhances the value of the property, which is good for you folks because it creates more revenue for you as the property values raise in that area. But the thing that I'm concerned with now is sitting on the Edwardsville Planning Commission. We just dealt with it, and you may be familiar with the project we have coming, which is the Hard Rock Hotel and the associated development around there. Same developer has a project just down the street on the Bonner side, huge project there, and he just bought some more land down 110th Street. That's 3 projects that are massive that are going to contribute to our community. Those folks, they're out of Minneapolis, first came down here, and they first came to Kansas City, Kansas to do business. And they were jerked around so much that they just said, to hell with it, we'll go over to Edwardsville and see how it works there. And obviously, it worked out well for them. That's not because we rolled over and just gave them everything they wanted. But what we did do was we worked with them efficiently. It didn't take them 2.5 years for us to wake up and say, here's your project. So with that in mind, I would encourage you to do the best that you can to get this moving and other developments like this
so that your city does not get a reputation for being hostile to development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa Gardner, 5141 Stearns, Shawnee, Kansas. I work for ONDA, and in 2013 we got the grant to build the Save-A-Lot. That was a great thing. We were able to get the store built and running, and it's still running. Then Walmart came. In 2014, we got the grant to build Good Sense. That became Pizza Hut, Wendy's, when Good Sense couldn't operate the restaurant. And we went forward trying to get this developed. In 2015, we got the grant to build the Dunkin' Donuts, all in that same strip of land that was given to us long ago. These properties should have already been developed. We should not be here tonight talking about not being able to develop. They should have already been built. It's dirty politics. It's a bad mark against the KCK. And I'm very disappointed in all of you. I think Argentine is. They've lost the jobs, the services, and the businesses that would have come because of these developments. I hope that you can straighten it out.
My name is Mario Escobar. I live at 1438 South 25th Street there in Argentine. I'm the president of Vanna Villa Argentina Homeowner Association, and we've had meetings on this several times for this project. You know, we were looking forward for this. It's a shame that this doesn't go through. Like the Commissioner said, we've been dealing with this for 4 years now, and it should have been done a long time ago. We just hope that these people that want to do business in our community will still be with us, you know, if we ever come down to this. But you know, it's a boost for our community, which will also eventually down the road will bring more development to our community. So I hope when it comes up again that you don't delay this anymore. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Henry Sandate. I spoke to you last month. I am the chairman of the board of Argentine Neighborhood Development Association. I live in Shawnee, Kansas. I've been on this board for 12 years since this organization, since its inception. I don't live in Wyandotte County. I'm a resident of Shawnee, as I mentioned, but I have a real sincere concern for the community, specifically the large Hispanic community, Mexican-American community that resides there. And also the other minorities, and I would say the lower income Caucasian population that lives there as well. These folks have been ignored. This community has been written off. I'm not sure what they did, but it's very obvious that Wyandotte County does not care about the residents of Argentine. And I'm not sure if it's racial, but the implications are such that it seems to be that way because the majority of the people leading this community are Caucasian, to be honest with you. And the majority of the population happens to be Hispanic, Mexican-American. And it just seems like the services that exist for this community are not underwritten or provided for. The stewardship's not there. The concerned leadership is not there for this part of your city, and it just seems like you know, either they're along with being exploited, and I would say exploited because obviously with a poverty community there's grants and there's welfare and there's CHIP and there's all sorts of federal programs that you folks receive money for. And, you know, I didn't want to think that, but I spoke with another developer who spoke with the previous mayor, and he goes, when I spoke to him about the vacancy situation, because I approached him and said, I would be glad to purchase every one of those properties and develop those. And that developer said to me, he goes, I never got a phone call. I never got any emails. He goes, I emailed him 3 times. I called him 3 times, never got a response. And he said to me, you know what that says to me, Mr. Sandate? This developer from Johnson County says to me. I said, no, sir, what does that say? He says, there's a lot of money in poverty, and they really need those Hispanics to be poor. So this is your city. I'm going to try to help those people as much as I can, and given myself in a community where I do not reside, because I feel for those people. These are American citizens. These are Wyandotte County citizens who deserve an opportunity to climb out of poverty. And this project would have definitely given them that opportunity. And gentlemen, congratulations. You've done very well keeping them poor and running your federal programs.
Mario Madrigal. I live at 1528 South 42nd Street. I just turned 60 years old a couple of weeks ago, and I've lived 57 of those 60 years in Wyandotte County. And I spent the first 18 in District 3 before moving to our current address. And I could say this, I thought the day of the 3-headed monster in Wyandotte County, back when we had just a mayor and a finance director, were over. I thought our former mayor, Mark Holland, was behind delaying this project for the last 3 years, but now I think I know where that's coming from. And that's from you, Mr. City Administrator. You've let us down in Wyandotte County, and I think you should look in the mirror tonight when you go home, because all you have done is lied to the people of the 3rd District for the last 3 to 4 years. Thank you.
Are there any other conferees?
Hello, my name is Faith Rivera. I'm a 3rd-generation Rosedalian. I live at 908 Hagman Street in Kansas City, Kansas. I am not only a resident, I've also taken the opportunity that within this last year to become a precinct leader. So I have also been elected in my area. And I have come today because I was concerned for my community. Not only do I knock door to door in my community, but I also do it not only in Kansas, but in Missouri. So I want to let you know that when I walk in Kansas City, Kansas, that's Turner, that's Argentine, and that's Rosedale, Northeast, we're all concerned currently about where our taxes are going to. And this is why I came today. I don't want my taxes to go to a franchise for a fast food. I don't want that. I have 2 children that are also living and residing in Rosedale, and they will have to pay for this. So that's why I came today, and I thank you.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Murguia. I live at 1430 South 25th Street. I'm a multi-generational Argentine resident. My grandparents started living there many years ago. And when I decided to make my residence there in Argentine, I got many questions like, why don't you go to the West End? You have enough money to go over there. They have everything you can need, retail, fast food, whatever. But my family grew up in that area, and I feel it's very difficult, but it was not a difficult decision for me to live in a community which I love. And, over the past 10 years, we have been making progress in that area, which I hadn't seen as a child. And for our government to stand in the way of further development is very appalling. it makes me very angry that, for such a small commitment and other projects that that they have undergone in that area, it has been very prosperous to the surrounding area. And it just seems like a slap in the face that if I did my job the way that some people have done their jobs here, people would die, okay? I'm a firefighter, EMT, and if this gross negligence that has occurred tonight would have happened on my watch, people would die. So people's lives can be dependent on the money for finding these jobs and for future development in this area. So take that with a grain of salt.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the commission? Now is the time, should you have any comments, questions. Note that no one else is coming forward. Well, in light of the new information, I don't know if there's any action we can take on this issue tonight. I would ask that we acknowledge those that came out this evening. Thank you for your community input. It's very important that we have an opportunity to hear your concerns and your comments. But the fact that we cannot take any action this evening, it would be for informational purposes only. At this time, meeting's adjourned.